Hi, this is Dr. Karen Becker, and today we're going to discuss why dogs and cats can eat raw meat. Really, this is probably the most common question I get, especially either uneducated pet owners when they gasp or come into my house and say, my gosh, you feed your pets raw meat? Or my clients come in to my practice, they have their pets on a raw food diet, but they're getting arguments from their veterinarian, uneducated veterinarian, about why they should not be giving their dogs and cats raw meat. Really, to argue this whole entire point is moot because dogs and cats have been consuming living raw meats for thousands of years. Barn cats to this day catch and kill mice, and we don't call poison control. Farmers don't call poison control when their farm dogs find whole litters of baby bunnies and eat them all like little Tootsie Rolls. They don't call poison control about what to do or how to induce vomiting because, my gosh, my dog or cat has consumed raw meat. In those situations, most people's common sense kick in and they think, well, I understand that cats are designed to hunt mice, but I don't think I should be giving them raw chicken, when the truth is cats and dogs are both designed specifically, and they have adapted, their bodies have adapted to consume raw meat for the last thousands and thousands of years. Now, the first bag of commercial dog and cat food into the market about 100 years ago. So it's important to recognize that from a historical perspective, dog and cat food is brand new to the market, and in the last 100 years your dog and cat's GI tract has not evolved to handle an entirely kibble-based diet. Now, what's interesting is because dogs and cats are amazingly resilient, and actually they're very capable of processing foods that aren't necessarily biologically appropriate. That has made for potential for abuse, dietary abuse, amongst the veterinary community because, in essence, dog and cat food, kibbled food in a bag, has become so convenient that we've recommended it in the last 100 years, and really out of a product sales, dog food sales and cat food sales are a multi-million-dollar industry. Out of us presenting this as well, it's convenient, it's quick, it's cheap, there's no mess, there's no cleanup. You can just put it in the pantry, scoop a one or two scoops out, put it in your dog or cat's dish, and you're done for the day. Because we've marketed it so successfully, and because dogs and cats can eat it and survive, maybe not thrive, but survive, we assume that that's good enough. And actually, even in veterinary schools, we're not even taught anything else. You would feed dog and cat food. There would be no other concern. So this concept of actually feeding pets a living food diet is strange to some veterinarians because their statement is, why don't you just feed your cat food, for crying out loud? Why do you have to make food, or why do you have to feed living foods? And really, when you come down to it and do the research, dogs and cats are designed to eat living foods, and they're meant to eat unprocessed, raw, healthful foods. And so it's a lot like deciding to give your child a meal replacement bar. You can do that now and then and get by, but you would never raise your child consuming an entire meal replacement bar. That's what we do for dogs and cats, unless, of course, you realize that you need to be including some living foods into your pet's diet for the success of their overall immune function and because we want their organs to thrive. So, all that said, we have become a fast food nation. Most people feed their dogs dog and cat food, so the thought of feeding living foods is new and novel. Those of you that have been feeding living foods or raw food diet for quite some time probably do as much educating as I do when it comes to helping people understand why dogs and cats can do better on their species appropriate or evolutionary diet, the diet that they were actually biologically designed to consume. So I would say the biggest questions I get from uneducated veterinarians and people that have never thought about feeding their pets anything other than kibble or canned food is, number one, what about the parasites? And what I will tell you with parasites is this. Parasites, which are passed up the food chain, roundworms, hookworms, tapeworms, are found in the guts, in the entrails or gastrointestinal tracts of animals. We don't feed guts. Even if you buy a commercially available raw food diet, there are no guts in that meat because guts are where the parasites are. If you make a homemade raw food diet, you don't include guts, which are stomach, small intestine, colon, large intestine. We don't include that part of the prey species because, for obvious reasons, that's where the parasites are. So when people say, you're going to give your dog worms, feeding your dog's raw meats in and of themselves, if they're processed effectively, muscle meat, in theory, should be sterile because it is, there's no bacteria found in muscle meat. Now, we know that that's not true because we know that bacterial contamination can become a problem. We'll discuss that in 1 minute. There are some types of parasites that can rarely make their way out of the GI tract and into sterile muscle meats of prey species. So the types of bacteria that you need to be concerned about, or the types of parasites you need to be concerned about, can be effectively removed if you freeze meats for 3 days prior to feeding them to your dogs. So for instance, toxoplasmosis, which can sometimes be found encysted in muscle meats, can be successfully killed if you freeze your meats for 3 days, a minimum of 3 days before you feed them to your pets. So by freezing meats first before you feed them, a lot like sushi, and by removing the guts of your prey species, you can successfully avoid transmitting parasites to your pets by feeding a raw meat diet. The second big question I get as a veterinarian is, what about salmonella? One of the things that's important to recognize when it comes to salmonella or any potentially pathogenic bacteria is that there has to be some contamination. And contamination absolutely does occur. That's where all the recalls come in, even for human foods. When it comes to salmonella outbreaks, there's been contamination in the food chain. So it's important to remember that salmonella is not just one species of salmonella. There are over 1,800 serovars of salmonella. Salmonella is a gram-negative bacteria. It's a facultatively anaerobic bacteria that exists in many, many species of mammals. The most common species of salmonella that exists in dogs and cats is Salmonella typhimurium. Now, I want to read to you a paragraph from the Salmonella Information Network on VIN, the Veterinary Information Network. There's an update that is given every now and then on the most recent information pertaining to salmonella in dogs and cats. I want to read this to you because I think it could help with your perspective on viewing or considering salmonella as a terrible contaminant in your pet's food or in your pet's GI tract. Salmonella, actually when I get done reading this, you may end up thinking that your dogs and cats are a little bit more like reptiles in the sense that they can harbor salmonella naturally in their GI tracts. Okay, the clinical significance of bacteria such as Clostridium and Salmonella causing diarrhea or illness in dogs and cats is clouded by the existence of many of these organisms as normal constituents of the indigenous intestinal flora. That's a fancy way of saying they're naturally there. The primary enteropathogenic bacteria most commonly incriminating in canine and feline diarrhea is Clostridium perfringens, Clostridium difficile, Campylobacter, and Salmonella. Veterinarians are faced with a quandary when attempting to diagnose small animals with suspected bacterial-associated diarrhea because the isolation rates of these pathogenic bacteria are similar in diuretic and non-diuretic animals, and because the incidence of bacterial-associated diarrhea is extremely variable. Salmonella species are commonly isolated from both healthy and hospitalized dogs and cats. What they're saying in a nutshell is that dogs and cats naturally have some salmonella in their GI tracts, so it's not a ragingly foreign bacteria that they can acquire. That makes it difficult. If your veterinarian says your dog has acquired salmonella, many of my clients will gasp and think, oh my gosh, but the truth is salmonella can naturally exist in your pet's GI tract, so it's not necessarily a foreign pathogenic invader. This article goes on to say, factors that increase the likelihood of clinical disease from salmonella include the age of the animal, poor nutrition, the presence of cancer or neoplasia, and other concurrent diseases and stress, as well as the administration of antibiotics, chemotherapy, or glucocorticoids, which are steroids. So in conclusion, these potentially harmful bacteria that naturally exist in your pet's GI tract are there whether you feed raw foods or not. So people saying, well, my goodness, you could contaminate your pet with salmonella. Your pet already is contaminated with salmonella. Dogs and cats are designed to be able to handle these bacterial loads that are quite foreign to human GI tracts because they've evolved to be able to handle heavy bacterial loads in their food. They are well equipped via nature to be able to handle heavy doses of abnormal bacteria because they catch and kill live food. Dogs and cats' stomach acid is highly acidic. It has a pH of 1, and so we know that at that pH level, there's nothing that can survive healthy stomach acid. That stomach acid is there in such high quantities to be able to effectively remove many of these potentially contaminated meat sources. In addition, your dogs and cats are wired with a tremendous amount of bile, and bile is also antiparasitic and antipathogenic. So bile is a secondary defense. Dogs and cats have strong pancreatic enzymes that also help digest and break down food. And so their bodies are given built-in, God-given resources to be able to effectively cope with heavier bacterial loads. Now, you'll be able to recognize that this article, as well as informed veterinarians, believe that because dogs and cats are equipped to handle heavy bacterial loads, it's important that you do what this article is suggesting: keep your dogs and cats' GI tracts resilient and strong to be able to defend not only against pathogenic bacteria that could be coming into the food, but for healthy immunologic function across the board. So, number one, reducing stress means feeding a biologically appropriate diet, feeding diets that your dogs and cats are meant to eat. We feed vegetarian animals vegetarian foods, and we feed carnivores meat-based foods. It's important to do that. Avoiding unnecessary drugs such as antibiotics, and certainly reseeding the gut after antibiotic therapy or keeping your pet on a probiotic is a really good idea because it helps balance the ratio of good to bad bacteria or flora in your pet's gut. A strong digestive enzyme can help promote effective digestion in your pets. And so combining healthy diet, healthy lifestyle, digestive enzymes, and probiotics is an effective way to not only nourish your pet with the most species-appropriate foods to help support healthy immunologic function, but it can do so in a way that helps bring vibrancy to your pet's body, unlike feeding a rendered, processed, chemically ridden, over-processed, inorganic, grain-based food, which is what has come about in the last 100 years. Pets aren't designed to eat those foods, and we know that the sooner we can get your pet onto a species-appropriate diet, which they were designed to eat and healthfully process, the sooner you can move along to helping your pet achieve vibrant health.